This is Family Like a Ghost, and we're live on the air with Brenden Kumarasamy, and we're going to talk about how to become a world-class communicator. He's going to talk to that. But the other thing, the first time he's been on the podcast, and we do have to get rid of some business at the beginning. We do have a sponsor, Newsly.me, and they are an iOS and Android app, and they actually put this podcast on the air in an audio form. So if you're Newsly.me, use coupon code GHOST2021. That actually still works, and you can get 1 month free premium subscription. Stop scrolling and start listening. So now that we've talked about our sponsor, we'll actually bring your link up so that I'll stay up through the whole time. And we can talk about how you got into the art of being a rock star communicator.
Yeah, for sure, fandom, absolutely, man. So how it got started for me was when I was in college slash university. I went to business school, fandom, and that's how I learned
Hmm.
how to communicate. I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were like playing rugby or baseball or basketball, things you probably wouldn't see me playing, I did presentations competitively, and that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching a lot of the students in college, and that's how I learned how to coach people, and that's what led to the YouTube channel. I just felt a lot of the things I was sharing with a lot of the students wasn't really available for free on the internet. So I started making videos and it just turned into something I never could have imagined.
That's interesting. So this was business school, like a MBA type program.
You got it, the level under. So I did a bachelor's in accounting, funny enough. I
Okay,
used to be an accountant before I did this for a living. But yeah, exactly. So it was a bachelor's degree.
that's cool. Because I mean, it's interesting how people, get into the career that they're in. You never know what direction you're gonna. You find something that's a niche. You're doing something nobody else is doing, and then you excel at it. So I guess one of the things I like to ask is like what is the biggest challenge with public speaking, and how do you like help people overcome that type of challenge?
Yeah, for sure, fandom. So a lot of people think that the biggest challenge is fear, but the biggest challenge is actually motivation. Because if we're
Mhm.
not motivated to conquer the fear, if we're not motivated to actually create a passion for music or anything else, we just don't get it done. We don't do it. So motivation is the most important thing. So now the question is, how do we get motivated with our communication? Because most of us see it like a chore, like doing the dishes. Oh my God, stress, negativity, anxiety. I don't really want to get better at communication. So there's no excitement around it. So the question is now, how do you create excitement around it? Through this question: how would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? We dream about the expensive things we want to buy, the vacations we want to go on. When was the last time we dreamed about our communication skills? And the answer is never. So I would encourage us to start right now.
That's a good thing because I'm a musician, I'm a producer, and part of what we're doing when we're artists is like we have to get the ideas in our head to be understood and then adopted, and people playlist us, and so it's a communication's a different type of thing because we're taking art and trying to get people to accept it or want to go with it. But I still think I could use a lot of the things you're talking about because we still have to talk to promoters, we have to talk to business people, we have to talk to other people. So I think even if you're a musician, you can say, "Well, I don't need that." I think I would still think you do.
I agree. I think a lot of musicians, like I have, funny enough, Phantom, I have a YouTube video called The Three Lessons I Learned from Rappers that apply to any presentation. And one of the things I tell a lot of my creatives is they don't take the business side of music seriously now because they focus a lot on making their craft, they're making their music, and but they don't focus on the management side, right? I think Russ is a great example in the marketplace right now of someone who understands the music side. So he's obviously a super talented guy, and
Mhm.
he also understands the management side of business. That's why he's able to take most of the profits and be an independent artist without signing to a label. And I think that's really the key. Or if he ever does, I think, I'm not sure if he's signed now, but he has a lot more leverage than any other
Yeah.
artist. And I think that's really the key is communication is the skill set that allows us to navigate those conversations professionally so we can get the best deal for ourselves and make the most money so we can actually create our music in a way that's sustainable.
But I think a problem with a lot of artists is like we're very insular. we're very kind of beholden to our what we're working on. We're trying to be secretive about what it is because we're trying to hold it off so people don't understand what we're doing until we want to drop it. And so I think there's a lot of trepidation. Like a lot of musicians, even before a gig, they're obsessing about like there's a lot of fear about even going on stage. And then what happens is like we have like another face, we have an other self that we kind of as a stage self, it's not necessarily my day-to-day self, but when I go on stage, I become this other person. And maybe that person might be better at communicating because they seem to get the crowd understanding. But as soon as I'm off the stage, I'm not that person anymore. So maybe I could try to keep some of that so I could have that kind of good vibe when I'm talking to somebody. But I think, yeah, a lot of times we're not happy till we actually get to the mic.
I
We have to probably work at that.
Absolutely, fan. And I love that. You know what I would say, and I think Kanye is a great example of this. He's the same person in the shows as he is outside of the mic. He's got that same personality that's whether you like him or not, he's still got that
Hmm.
same personality. And I think the message
He's
for all of us, I think the lesson we can get from somebody like Kanye is going back to the initial question, how would your life change if you're an exceptional communicator? The question in this context can be rephrased as, how would your life change if the person you were on the stage with the mic was the same person without the mic? Start to
Oh, I think
reflect.
I
Right.
think he ended up being like Bowie, who ended up staying in character all the time. David Bowie was famous for like staying in character like a method actor, and he would like stay in like Ziggy Stardust the whole time, and it actually helped his career because then people were like the press is following him, people were following him, and he's like, "Wow, you really are Ziggy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am Ziggy." He's like, for the time he's doing it, he was, and then he would change to a different character, like then White Duke or Aladdin, saying he would just change and he would stay in it and wouldn't get out of it. And it's kind of a method actor technique, but it did draw a lot of attention. But
Absolutely,
maybe
man.
everybody can't. Well,
Right.
the one
And
thing
I don't
I was
mean,
looking at,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, you don't
Well, I
need to
guess
be
I was
like, oh, go ahead.
no, no, go. You had a thought.
You're all good. No, no. What I was about to say, Phantom, is like you don't. We don't need to rely on method acting, but I meant more like that poise, that confidence that we have on a stage. Like for example, like my best friend's a rapper. He's a really good
Hmm.
musician in Montreal. I think he's going to win a Juno in the next 5 years. And I went to one of his house parties where he was actually like singing, and he was
Hmm.
just another animal, like a whole other level when the guy had a mic in his hand. And if he
Yeah.
brought that same level of confidence, that same level of poise outside of the stage, he doesn't need to pretend to be some different character. But if he just
Hmm.
brought that same like confidence of, yeah, I don't care if 10 labels reject me, the 11th person won't. If you bring that mentality into life, you'll just be a way more successful businessman and artist.
Well, I think what happens is like with musicians, like if you're not confident about talking to a lawyer, right? Like, well, I don't know that business, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go toe to toe with these people. And so I think that's what happens. People get they're intimidated, right? So they get intimidated. They feel like, well, I don't know this, and I think then they lose confidence as soon as you get a level of intimidation. You lose the confidence. You don't have the bravado, and it's hard to maintain that. So, do you have like ways for people to get better at that?
Absolutely, Phantom. So I always go back to what do we already have success in? So if I use that same analogy and I said, well, you need to learn a new instrument to produce a track, what would somebody say? They would say, well, I'm just going to learn it. I'm just
Hmm.
going to figure it out because I don't have the guy, I don't have the gal to actually play the trombone, and I got to figure it out. Or I'll find a special effects online and I'll mix it up for the tape. So we always can figure it out in the context of our expertise. So when it's music, we'll be like, yeah, yeah, if we don't have it, we'll just figure it out. We got to apply that same rationale across all areas of the music business, not just the craft itself. So
Yeah, the
that
bit.
means a lawyer, you don't need to be as smart as the entertainment lawyer you're signed under, but definitely knowing the bare bones minimum from other artists who are more successful than we are.
Mhm.
That will just give us the minimum, but you don't need to be the master at it. That's why you have management teams, people around you, agents who are doing things. But you got to know a little bit of everything so you're not completely lost and you have an idea of what's going on. Because remember, and this is something I tell artists all the time, is even if there's somebody managing your career, you're still the CEO. You're the CEO of your own life, and you need
Yeah.
to act like the CEO. The CEO always knows a little bit of everything.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times is like musicians think, well, the CEO is the CEO of the label they're under. But like when you're your brand, you're the CEO of your brand. So if you're out there as an yeah, you have to have that understanding. Like Prince knew that. He created symbols to say that is me. I am the brand. you know, so he created his own icon because he was an icon. but I think the other thing I think that's really interesting is that you have to actually do some prep work like you said like you're not going to be a lawyer but maybe you should do some pre-work into anything you do like the same level that you do as a musician. We all rehearse, we all learn new things all the time in terms of our art or to find things out that because if we want to apply it creatively we'll do tons of things that are hard. And so like it's probably because we don't like it. So it's like, how do you, like you said at the beginning, it's like you don't really like the communication. You're kind of dreading it, like your kid that was at in school and they had to join choir and they really were like frightened of it, or they're frightened of doing the school play. And you got some kids who are like, no, that's great, and the other kids who are like, they're shaking in their boots because they're like they can't handle it. So how do you get better from being like that extreme of like the kid shaking and you can't handle it?
Absolutely, Phantom. So at the end of the day, Phantom, communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. Kind of like writing and recording a song. It's not just writing the song on the piece of paper, it's also understanding what the instrumentals are, who's going to play, is there going to be a feature, where are we going to record this, what's the sound quality. So there's 18 different balls in recording a song. In the same way, there's 18 different balls when doing a presentation and learning how to communicate effectively. So, what's the lesson? The lesson is juggle one ball at a time. So, what are the three easiest balls that we can juggle? So, let's talk about the three that I think will build momentum in the way that we communicate ideas effectively, Finn. Let's start with number
Mhm.
one, sending video messages. A lot of us, when we think about posting on social media, I don't even start there, Phantom. I start
Mhm.
with make a list of 5 to 10 people you really love in your life. People like your mom, your brother, your sister, people who support your music. Maybe it could be the first people who bought your mixtape, the first people who really believed in you. And ask yourself, when was the last time you sent them a 20-second video message just telling them how much you appreciate them in your life? And I'm shocked at how few artists do this because at the end of the day, Kevin Kelly talks about it so well in A Thousand True Fans, his article, that you only need 1,000 people who really love you. And if they all spend
Mhm.
$100 on you every year, you'll make 100 grand a year. So when you
Yeah, that's
send
true.
video messages when people buy your tape, it really makes an impression on them because nobody does it in this business.
Yeah, that's a good idea because yeah, the personal touch, that's where a lot of times we switch to video because I used to do this audio podcasting and then the video podcasting has a different dynamic. And I jumped like wholeheartedly into it because I thought it was better. Because I started in audio and then I switched to this format because I think it's just a better format and there's other things we can do with it. But like when you actually brought this master talk idea, I know you were talking about how you were doing this stuff in college and you were actually in these competitions, but where did the idea for master talk is that just a kind of outshoot of what you were doing in college, or it was
You
something
got it.
else?
You got it, fam. So towards the end of my university career, because the goal was to get a job. I wasn't looking to be an executive, like an entrepreneur or a YouTuber or any of that stuff.
Mhm.
But in my last semester of college, I'd probably coached maybe 55 people, 60 people on communication. And all of them asked me the most important question of my life. And the question was, how did you learn how to speak? And I said, huh, that's a great question. I don't really know. They said, well, did you hire a coach? Did you watch YouTube videos? And that's what gave me the idea for Master Talk. So I started making YouTube videos for fun in my mom's basement. And then what happened is, as I was working at IBM, I used to be a technology consultant. That was my previous life. So that was my day job. and I loved it actually. It was a great company, and I was doing really well financially. But I was leaving the fulfillment on the table. I wasn't actually creating something that was meaningful to other people, and that's what sparked it. So after a few years, I started getting a lot of IT executives to be clients because they needed communication. So they would watch my YouTube videos and go, "I'd rather just hire the guy directly," and that's how I was able to replace all of my income, and I went full time on this.
Wow. So you're able to get from the YouTube videos actually gigs, paying gigs where like executives hire you as a consultant and you get paid for hire or work for hire for that. That's what you're able to do that or on
You got
commission
it.
or yeah, that's cool. Um, because that's I mean a lot of the whole industry. Like I'm an IT person on my day job, and a lot of IT people not to come down, but like programmers are notorious for not having the best communication skills. Like I am a what you call a business system analyst, and the reason that they create our role is to kind of be in between the programmer and the executive. So I actually go to the executive and I find out what they want, and I can actually understand what the programmer does because I'm technical enough to know the code. So I'm the kind of interpreter of what
You're the
like this.
liaison.
Yeah, I go between the two worlds, like the high level people who've got these business cases, but they don't need tech, and the programmers. If you put them in front of the executive, they might get fired because because of what they would say. So they got to have somebody in between. So yeah, so it's I understand communication to a certain extent from that kind of situation, but we can always do better. You know, I'm 54, and I would say when I was 27, I'm not as good as I am now. It's just a natural progression, but you know, I'm always willing to learn, and from the podcasting and the music, I've been able to get a different skill set that puts me a little bit above. And even before this, I actually did was a Uber driver for like 5 years, and I went into it just to learn how to be a better communicator. I
Mm.
did it because of the conversations you have when you're a driver, right, with your passenger. And how you get to be a 5-star driver is because you can have a good rapport with the client and they give you the five. You know, so that was like to me a way to get better, and it did help.
I love that. That's awesome, man. And that's really the key. I think you're a great example of this. Is that at the end of the day, all of us can be great communicators. We don't need to be big executives. We just need to focus on what is it that we want in our life. Who already has the goal that we want in our life? And the third piece is what type of communicator are they? And that's what creates incentive. It creates motivation for us to say, you know what? This communication thing is something we should probably figure out. Maybe not necessarily for an IT career, but for a music business,
Well, yeah,
for
it's
everything
any
that we do in life.
yeah, it's any career. Because I mean, I talk to poets, I talk to actors, I talk to all kinds of creatives, not just musicians. And I think we all have to take our art and try to have a business proposal, and that's where we fall down because you know I don't like that. There's a lot of people tell you I'm totally not into that, right? But you need to be into it. So how could you do like daily exercise to practice communication? What do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely, Phantom. So I call this my easy threes. So three easy things that people could implement. Number one, the random word exercise. Pick a random word like haircut, like shirt, like rapper, like music, and create random presentations out of thin air. And the
Hmm.
reason I recommend this is because if you can make sense out of nonsense, you could make sense out of anything. And that's why I recommend the random word exercise a few times a day. You can do this with your family, the people around you. That's the easiest way to practice the drill. That's number one. Number two is the question drill. We get asked questions all the time, Phantom. When people are asking us about our music, when people are asking us questions on a podcast, at work, in the boardroom, we're always getting asked questions all the time in our lives. But a lot of us are reactive to those questions. We wait for the question to appear and then we answer it. Not the right approach because you can get caught off guard. So instead, what you want to do is every day for 5 minutes, think of the answer to one question. That's it. And if you do that for 5 minutes every day for a year, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry, about your life, and you'll be bulletproof. Which brings me to number three, just send video messages to people that you love. That's it.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think it's a good approach. I haven't, thought about those things. Um, one of the things I started doing is like these other podcast platforms I started guesting on. I would just like I'm primarily a music podcaster, but I would jump on this other app and talk to life coaches, and then just have random conversations with life coaches coming from a different perspective, and try to figure out if I can actually, you know, have them not hang up on me so I can actually, be in their podcast and be relevant to what they're doing. And then I actually learned how to, communicate with somebody on a totally different topic where they thought I was interesting enough to keep me on for 20, 30 minutes. And I said, well, that's weird. I didn't know if I could do that. And I was like, well, I'm going to try it. And I've been doing it. Like, I do it 2 or 3 times a day. I jump on this other app and they have really nothing to do with what I do, but I find it interesting just to kind of do this kind of exercise to see if I can communicate with somebody in a totally different area.
I think that's awesome, Phantom, and super advanced as well. I don't think most beginners should do that because I'm actually doing that right now in the show, right? Because a lot of what I do isn't necessarily a lot. Now I'm realizing we have a lot more in common than I initially thought, because you have a career in IT. But I would say in most cases, for most people out there, Phantom, getting on a podcast is really scary for them. So I would say the random word exercise is probably a good place to start. Pick a random
Yeah.
word. Do this with your kid. If you have a kid, do this with your family. Do the question drill. It takes 5 minutes a day, and do the same thing with the video message. A few times a day, and that alone will help build up your momentum really quickly. And it doesn't take a lot of time either. 15 minutes max a day is what you'll need to do all three exercises.
So I think one of the things that we've been kind of hinting at in this whole conversation, because we're kind of getting near the end, but I think like, what's the advice on how to communicate if you're introverted, which we've kind of hinted that a lot of musicians are in that position, or creative
Yeah,
people
for
are kind of introverted.
yeah, absolutely, Phantom. So here's what I'll say. I'll say that most of my clients are actually introverted in the sense that they have that leniency, but they're also the best people I've worked with in my career. So it's interesting that we have that stigma out there. So why do I tell you this? I tell you this because there are three reasons why introverts are actually better communicators than extroverts. And take it from an extrovert, which is me, right? I'm an extra extrovert, as they say. So there's three things. The first thing is that introverts are much better at listening, Phantom, in the sense that they speak less on average, so they listen more on average. It's easier for them to adapt the messaging to the people around them. That's one. Number two, they're much better at pausing. Pausing is foundational to not just music, but communication. The way that we talk to people, the way that we take a beat and we take a breath to really get people excited about our message. Introverts, it's a joke for them to learn this because they're already comfortable with silence. So all you have to do is go, hey, like just pause for 2 seconds, and they just do it. Extroverts, on the other hand, we struggle with pausing. Why? Because we love to talk. So whenever we're at a party and there's a pause, you want to fill it up. You go, so Phantom, what's your favorite color? You just want to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
filling up that space, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
find.
I get yeah. I like that because, like, I think there's some point when you become comfortable as a musician, then you start being very assertive, and then you start, like, being so directed that you might not listen to other people because you keep on going on and on. Um, and that's, like, really you're a creative person, getting feedback from other musicians or letting them feel confident that you're not gonna shoot them down is really a life lesson because you can always get better. And if you think you're it, if you think, oh, I'm it, I don't need to do any, I'm already there. I don't need to hear anybody else. It's kind of like that's not a good place to be. It's always you always can get better, and so you should probably pause, like you said, so you let somebody else kind of give you some information, so you can like, oh, maybe I should change it. Maybe it's not the best, but well, the bravado is what kind of gives you the confidence, and you have to have a certain level of it. Then you have to be mindful of how to balance it, I think.
Especially in this business, Phantom. Like in music, if you're not able to reinvent yourself, I mean, we know the history. History never repeats itself, but it sure does rhyme. Most successful musicians don't have a long career. Only
Yeah,
some of
for
them do.
sure. Yeah,
So
you
if
only
you
have
have that,
one hit wonder.
yeah, like if you have that attitude going in, not you obviously, but the people who are listening to this, you're gonna lose in the music business long term.
Yeah, I mean, I just been in a different angle. I decided to get into podcasting to extend my independent music, which it has. Because the people will go and check out my catalog. So, well, who's this Phantom guy? And then they check it, and then my numbers keep on increasing, just
That's
because I'm
awesome.
doing something different. And it's just a way to do advertising for my brand. I found a way to do it that's not eccentric, fully focused on me, because go and I actually pay it for by talking about somebody else. But I think you're kind of cut off for the next thing you wanted to do. But I really appreciate that you came on the show. I think there's a life lesson here for everybody, and this is on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch, and it will be on Spotify podcast later tonight, along with like Apple Podcast, Google Play, and all those places. So you'll be able to cascade it, and I will give that information to you so you can give it to your fan base.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me on, Phantom. This is great.
Well, thank you. Have a great night.
You too, brother.